It had been 21 years since I walked out the doors of East Valley High for the last time, holding nothing but a diploma and a silent vow to never come back. I'd made it halfway down the front steps before I heard someone yell, "Don't trip, Captain Nobody," followed by laughter that chased me like ghosts all the way into adulthood. I didn't turn around. I never did. But the sound burned itself into my memory, just another scar among many I'd earned by surviving those hallways. Back then, I wasn't the type of girl anyone remembered for the right reasons. I wasn't prom queen or class president. I wasn't the one boys flirted with or girls confided in. I was the one sitting alone at lunch, drawing battle strategies in the margins of my textbooks while pretending I didn't hear the whispers. I was the kid with the thrift store jeans, the military haircut my father made me keep, and the eyes that saw too much. They called me ROTC freak, Army Barbie, cold fish. They thought they were clever. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I wasn't just memorizing formations and leadership theory, because it was school credit. I was studying survival. I was preparing. Not for college. Not for some dream job. But for a life where I'd never again be the smallest person in the room. And I wasn't. Now I stood in front of the mirror of my hotel suite, tightening the buttons of a dark navy blazer with 4 stars stitched just above my left breast. The medals were locked away back at base. I didn't need to wear them to carry their weight. My hair, once blunt and boyish by force, now swept into a soft, severe twist at the nape of my neck. My heels were low, but lethal. My face was still mine, older, sharper, unreadable. The invitation to the reunion had arrived 6 months ago, buried between classified briefings and security clearances. I almost threw it out. But something in me paused. A flicker of curiosity maybe. Or justice. Or the kind of boldness that comes only when you've long since stopped needing anyone's approval. Come relive the glory days, it had said in Comic Sans no less. Reconnect with old friends. Revisit the best years of your life. Best years. That was rich. The venue was the high school gym, of course it was. Balloons. Tacky banners. A punch table manned by someone's cousin in a bow tie. When I walked in, no one noticed at first. Not really. I was just another woman in a fitted suit and sharp shoes, older and unfamiliar. Then someone gasped. Wait. Is that Charlie Woods? I smiled faintly. No one had used my full name in years. These days it was General Woods, or ma'am, or more often than not just a respectful silence followed by a salute. But to them, I was still Charlie. Weird little Charlie from homeroom. People started turning, whispering. Some smiled, others stared. Amanda Fletcher, still in a too-tight dress, still clinging to the brittle confidence of her cheerleading days, was the first to approach. Wow, she said, blinking. You really showed up. I did. She looked me up and down, trying to figure out where to place me. Not rich enough to be in finance. Not soft enough for PR. Not glamorous enough for LA. But I didn't offer clues. I let her squirm. We all thought you were dead, she said with a tight laugh. Not quite, I replied. And then I walked past her. Into the center of the room. Into the memory of who I'd been. And the truth of who I'd become. They didn't know. But they would. The lights of the gym were harsh. Buzzing overhead like the years had never passed. Like I was still 17 and out of place. But this time I didn't flinch. Istut taller. Straighter. People shifted as I passed, glancing and whispering as if trying to recall if they'd ever spoken to me kindly. Most hadn't. The old trophies still lined the glass case outside the gym. And I noticed my name wasn't on any of them. Amanda's was. Brian's was. Jason Kendall, who once knocked over my lunch tray and called it a training exercise, had 2 for varsity wrestling. My own legacy had never been honored on those walls. That was fine. I carried it elsewhere. On my shoulders, in my spine, in my orders signed by the Pentagon. Charlie, a voice called. I turned. It was Mr. Hanley, our former history teacher, now stooped and silver-haired, holding a styrofoam cup of punch like it was a relic. Sir, I nodded. His eyes widened. Is that 4 stars? It is. Good God. He blinked. You outrank everyone in this room. I allowed myself the smallest smile. I always did, sir. They just didn't know it yet. He let out a breathless chuckle. I knew you'd go far. You had that look. What look? He tapped his temple. The one that says, I already see the exit, and I don't need your permission to take it. I didn't stay long in conversation. I moved through the crowd like a silent front line. Some people tried to engage. Most didn't know how. A few offered fake smiles and vague compliments. You look so professional. Still keeping busy? You must do something important. I gave them nothing. Let them stew. Because the truth was coming. And when it landed, it would be loud enough for the whole damn valley to hear. The music thumped low and familiar in the gym. Some early 2000s anthem that once meant everything to them and nothing to me. I hovered near the walls, scanning the faces of people who'd spent their teenage years acting like royalty, as if their lockers were thrones and every whispered insult was a decree. None of them had changed much. They'd aged, yes. Lines carved across cheeks, eyes duller, paunches forming where abs had once been. But the arrogance? Still intact. Still humming in the way they spoke to each other. Still gleaming in the smirks they threw my way. Not quite sure whether I was one of them or something else entirely. I spotted Jason Kendall by the punch bowl, leaning in too close to some woman half his age. His laughter was loud and needy. Next to him stood Amanda and her swarm of former cheerleaders, sipping their drinks like liquid confidence. They all noticed me now. Every glance was loaded, curious, calculating. I kept walking. I wasn't here for validation. Charlie, someone said behind me. I almost didn't recognize you. I turned to see Brian Ellsworth, our class vice president. He looked like every LinkedIn profile picture come to life. Beige suit, forced grin, the faint scent of department store cologne. Almost, I echoed. We were just talking about you actually, he said, motioning toward a group nearby. Wondering where you'd disappeared to all these years. Forward, I said. I moved forward. He chuckled, not getting it. Still got that edge, huh? Still got that edge. As if I'd just been edgy. Not brutalized. Not excluded. Not rebuilt piece by piece through years of sand, heat, orders, and silence. You know, Brian said, sipping his drink. Some of us always figured you'd do something cool. Like write a book or run a yoga retreat. I raised a brow. Close. Oh yeah? What are you doing now? That was the question. And I was about to answer it, not with words, but with thunder. I didn't have to say a word, because the universe said it for me. The vibration began subtly, a low, steady tremor that tickled the soles of everyone's shoes. Conversations faltered. Plastic cups froze midair. Someone glanced toward the gym doors, expecting maybe a delivery truck rumbling past. But I didn't move. I knew that sound by heart. Rotor blades. Whispers turned to startled murmurs. Amanda's lips parted in confusion. Jason muttered, "What the hell is that?" And then the windows rattled. The gym's main entrance flew open as two uniformed officers stepped through, their eyes scanning the crowd with practiced precision. Their appearance was crisp, their expressions unreadable, but their insignia was unmistakable to anyone who'd ever served. They were military. High clearance. Mine. The taller one raised a radio to his mouth. Visual contact confirmed. "We have her." Then he looked straight at me. "Ma'am, extraction team is in place. Are you ready?" "Ready? I was born for this." The room erupted. Not in panic, but in astonished, gasping awe. Every eye turned toward me. My silence thundered louder than any boast. Amanda dropped her drink. Brian's mouth hung open. I took a step forward. The two officers saluted. I returned it, sharp, clean, final. "Let's proceed." Outside, a Black Hawk had landed on the football field. And I, once the joke of this school, walked out past them all, my heels clacking like gunshots, through the open gym doors, into the night air and the spotlight of the landing zone. And as the blades churned the wind and lifted me away, the only thing I could hear was the memory of their laughter, now swallowed whole by the roar of my triumph. It was only supposed to be an appearance, show my face, remind myself of what I'd escaped, then disappear back into the air. But the chopper didn't take me far. Just 5 miles northeast, where the temporary command post for the joint training exercise had been set up. The reunion was simply a stop on the way. I stepped into the mobile command tent, and was greeted by the buzz of comms, the sharp scent of burnt coffee, and the salutes of men and women who didn't care what high school I came from. They cared only that I gave orders that saved lives, made decisions under pressure, and kept the mission intact. Still, something stuck in my mind, like gravel in a boot. That look on Amanda's face. The way Jason's jaw had gone slack. The dead silence after they heard "ma'am" from those two officers. It wasn't revenge I felt. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something cleaner, colder. I wanted them to see. Not the uniform. Not the chopper. Not even the salutes. Me. The girl they never saw. The woman they couldn't fathom. I turned to my aide, a bright-eyed lieutenant named McAllister. Get me a list of civilian liaison opportunities in the valley. I think it's time we gave this town something to talk about. You're staying, ma'am? Temporarily, I said, tapping my fingers against the edge of a classified file. But I want them to know that I'm not just a shadow from their past. Yes, ma'am. And just like that, the gears started turning. Meetings scheduled. Invitations extended. The school board received notice that General Woods, an alum, was open to visiting. The mayor's office reached out. Local news wanted an interview. It spread faster than gossip at prom. But this time, the spotlight wasn't on Amanda's new shoes or Jason's fading hairline. It was on me. And I wasn't blinking. It didn't take long before the news of my presence stirred up something primal in East Valley. Small towns feed on hierarchy the way big cities feed on chaos. The hierarchy had just been shaken to its core. Because the girl they'd written off, dismissed, ignored, laughed at, was suddenly unavoidable. My name was in the local paper. My face was on a regional morning show, sitting across from a host who'd once been a senior 2 grades above me, and who had clearly hoped I wouldn't remember his locker graffiti. I remembered everything. It wasn't vanity that brought me back into the town square. It was legacy. My legacy. For decades, the town had celebrated quarterbacks and beauty queens, built statues to mediocrity, named streets after men who'd merely lived long enough to retire. But now the school auditorium bore my name. General Charlotte Woods Leadership Hall. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was scheduled for Saturday. I didn't ask for it. I didn't need it. But I showed up anyway. In full uniform. Amanda showed up too, wearing a smile so thin it could have been printed on glass. She tried to corner me by the folding chairs near the podium, her voice syrupy and insincere. "You really made a name for yourself, huh?" she said, laughing too loudly. "Who would have thought?" I turned slowly. "You didn't." Her eyes narrowed just slightly, like she wanted to say something clever, but couldn't find footing. "I mean, we were just kids. High school wasn't everything." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. For some of us, it was just the beginning of a very long war." She looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. "By the way," I added, "I read your editorial in the reunion memory book. All that talk about resilience and compassion. You finally learn what those words mean." Her jaw twitched. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being accurate. There's a difference." I walked away before she could reply, my heels clicking against the polished stage floor as I approached the microphone. The audience hushed. Local officials sat in folding chairs. Veterans lined the back wall. Students fidgeted in their uniforms. Every set of eyes focused on me. I paused, then spoke. "When I graduated from East Valley High," I said slowly, "I wasn't voted most likely to succeed. I wasn't voted anything at all." The crowd chuckled, unsure if they were supposed to. I didn't belong to a clique or a club. I didn't win trophies. I wasn't invited to dances. I left this place without a trace. No photos in the yearbook, no signatures in scrapbooks. But I left with something far more powerful than recognition. I let that hang in the air. I left with a sense of purpose. One that I built brick by brick, in war zones and command tents, in strategy briefings and sleepless nights, in deployments that stretched into years. I've led troops, made battlefield decisions, negotiated with heads of state, and none of it would have happened if I had let your indifference define me. Silence. Then thunderous applause. But it wasn't the clapping that satisfied me. It was the silence that followed it. The stillness of people realizing they'd missed something, someone, So extraordinary, simply because she didn't fit into their boxes. That night, the mayor hosted a formal dinner in my honor. White linen tablecloths, flashbulbs, polished silverware and wine glasses filled with a local label that tasted like ambition and second chances. Amanda wasn't invited. Neither was Jason. But I didn't need them there. I had already won. Still, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I took a walk. The air was cooler than I expected, the sky wide and empty. I passed the high school again, lit only by dim exterior lights, the gym's banner from the reunion still sagging on one end. I stood in front of it, arms folded. My phone buzzed. It was a text, from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized it. Amanda, you made your point. Loud and clear. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I typed back. Me. That wasn't the point. The point is, I didn't need to. And I walked away. The banner flapped once in the wind behind me. Then it tore in half. I never planned revenge in the way Hollywood tells it, with vengeful glares and schemes scribbled on paper. No. My kind of revenge was quieter, more precise. It wasn't about retribution. It was about rewriting the hierarchy, correcting a record long ago falsified by ignorance and arrogance. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing nonstop. The city council wanted to name a leadership program after me. A local girls' mentorship nonprofit asked if I'd keynote their gala. The East Valley Gazette requested an op-ed about overcoming adversity. And then most deliciously, East Valley High School, my old prison, invited me to speak to the entire senior class next Friday. The same auditorium where Jason once mimed a grenade toss at me behind the principal's back. The same microphone Amanda once used to announce the winter court, and left my name off the ballot. Even though I'd been nominated. I said yes, of course. And then I made another call, one I'd been waiting years to place. Is General Woods speaking? Came a clipped, professional voice. This is she. General, this is Martha Jennings from the Department of Veteran Affairs. We received your request to sponsor a local community program. That's right, I replied. I want to fund a leadership initiative for girls, ages 13 to 17. I'll cover all operating costs personally for the first 2 years. That's incredibly generous. I'm not doing it for generosity, I said plainly. I'm doing it because this town forgot how to recognize power when it wasn't dressed up in a football jersey or a prom gown. There was a pause. Then, understood, ma'am. We got to work immediately. The flyers went out across schools, youth centers, gyms. Command Your Future. Female Leadership Initiative, founded by General Charlotte Woods. The website was sleek. The video pitch featured clips of me addressing troops, speaking at global summits, leading military drills. Within days, applications poured in. Within weeks, I was a headline. Within months, I'd become a phenomenon. And what was Amanda doing? Posting makeup tutorials to her 400 Instagram followers. Selling scented candles through a pyramid scheme. Leaving passive-aggressive comments under reunion photos she wasn't tagged in. But here's the best part. The school guidance counselor, who once told me I wasn't leadership material, emailed me requesting a reference letter for her daughter's application to my program. I wrote it myself. Line by line. Clinical. Precise. Supportive. But forgettable. Exactly like the words she once said to me. And when Amanda herself submitted an application for her niece, along with a too-friendly email dripping in faux warmth, I didn't respond at all. Some revenge is better served frozen, not just cold. My favorite moment, though, came at a board meeting for the school's alumni council. I'd been invited to serve as honorary co-chair. When I arrived, Jason was seated at the far end of the table. Apparently, he'd failed to recognize my name on the agenda. His face paled when I entered the room. His legs tried to follow, but the chair scraped back and caught on the rug. He stood awkwardly. Charlie, he croaked. I mean General Woods. Wow. Didn't expect. No need to stand. I cut in smoothly, taking my place at the head. I outrank you. Professionally. Academically. Socially. And morally. Sit down. There was no laughter this time. No smirks. Only the sound of paper shuffling, water pouring into glasses, and the distant, choking sound of a man realizing he was no longer king of anything. I chaired the meeting with brutal grace. Every motion passed. Every proposal I backed was approved. I spoke clearly, calmly, with the tone of a woman used to making decisions in war zones. Jason didn't say another word. And when it ended, he lingered behind like a forgotten coat, probably hoping to catch me alone. I didn't give him the chance. As I walked out the door, I left him with one last line. Next time you want to throw a punch, Jason, make sure the girl doesn't grow up to be the general. Then I was gone. By the end of that quarter, the town had changed and everyone knew it. The mural in the East Valley High gym had been repainted. Once it had featured outdated cliches. An eagle, a football, and 3 smiling seniors from the class of 2002, Jason, Amanda, and another forgettable jock whose glory days peaked before TikTok was invented. Now, towering above the bleachers, stood a painting of a young woman in military fatigues, staring down a war map with determined eyes. The plaque beneath it read, "From silent corners to commanding heights, General Charlotte Charlie Woods." They invited me to the unveiling. I didn't decline. When I arrived, the gym was packed. Teachers, students, parents, press. The school band fumbled through the national anthem while the cheerleading squad tried to stay relevant with choreographed claps. I stood near the stage in my ceremonial dress uniform, a silver-braided cord across my shoulder, every detail sharp enough to slice through memory. Amanda was there. Of course she was. She hovered near the snack table in a dress one size too ambitious, and a face covered in foundation thick enough to hide resentment. She didn't approach me this time. Her eyes did, though, constantly. And I let her look. Let her memorize the posture of a woman who had won without ever throwing a tantrum or a drink. The principal gave a speech. He fumbled my biography, mispronounced a rank or two. But when he handed me the microphone, the room stilled. Not with fear, but with reverence. I didn't speak of vengeance. I didn't recount insults or cafeteria humiliations. I didn't name names. Instead, I told a story. I told them about a girl who walked the same halls they did, but no one noticed her because she wasn't loud or pretty or popular. I told them how she built herself in silence, how she kept showing up, how she learned that power doesn't announce itself, it develops discipline. And then I ended with this. If someone here today feels invisible, ignored, out of place, I want you to remember something. Visibility doesn't equal value. The world may not applaud you now, but one day, it might have no choice but to salute. The applause lasted minutes. Real, honest, gut-deep applause. Later, at the reception, a line formed. Students, teachers, a few parents. Some asked for photos. Others asked for advice. But midway through, Jason appeared at the edge of the line. He didn't cut. He waited his turn. When it was finally his, he stepped forward, older and smaller than I remembered. His voice cracked a little. I just wanted to say, I was wrong. About you. About everything. I studied him for a long moment. Not out of cruelty, but calculation. Then I nodded. I know. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 20 years. And I extended my hand. Not for him. For me. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't just in the triumph. It's in the self-control it takes not to crush someone when you finally can. Jason shook my hand. Then stepped back. Faded into the crowd. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I gave interviews. Met donors. Laughed with kids who asked what rank came after general. But the final moment came as I stepped outside, the cool air brushing against my face. A little girl stood near the school steps, clutching a notebook. She looked maybe 12. Shy. Wide-eyed. Hi, she said. Can I ask you something? Of course. Were you always brave? I knelt down to her level. No, I said. But I was always watching. And I never stopped showing up. She smiled. I want to be like you. I touched the brim of my hat, gave her a wink. Then start now. I walked away under the stars, the gym lights fading behind me, and realized I didn't need revenge anymore. I had replaced it with something far more permanent. Respect. The months that followed were quieter, but no less impactful. The buzz of the reunion, the press, the programs, all of it had faded into the background, like the closing notes of a national anthem played just before a critical mission begins. What remained was purpose. I didn't return to base right away. Instead, I stayed in East Valley, temporarily assigned to a regional post but unofficially anchoring myself in the place where it had all started. Where the broken girl in the ROTC jacket first realized she'd have to build herself from scratch. There was something poetic about that. Each morning, I ran past the old school on my route, boots kicking up dust on the same streets I once walked with my head low. Now kids waved at me. Parents nodded. Teachers asked for coffee meetings to pick my brain. And always, that mural stared down, reminding everyone who thought power looked a certain way that they had been spectacularly wrong. One Sunday afternoon, I was invited to a small awards banquet downtown. Nothing grand, just a local leadership forum honoring contributions to education. I nearly declined. But then I saw the guest list. Amanda Fletcher, guest speaker. Curious. When I entered, she was already on stage, giving a speech about reinvention and finding your path. Her voice trembled when she saw me enter the room. I didn't sit near the front. I didn't need to. My presence was felt like static in the air, sharp, electric, unspoken. When it was my turn to speak, I took the podium with practiced calm. I didn't look at her once, but I could feel her looking at me. I used to think power was about noise, I began. About how loud you could be in a room. But I've learned that real power is silent. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't ask permission. And it rarely arrives when expected. I didn't mention Amanda. Or Jason. Or the years I spent clawing myself out of their shadows. I didn't have to. Because I wasn't in their shadow anymore. They were standing in mine. After the banquet, Amanda approached me at the exit, her smile tight. You really made something of yourself, she said. I didn't make something, I replied. I made everything. There was nothing left for her to say. Because in that moment we both knew. This wasn't just about high school or old grudges. It was about who had evolved and who had stayed frozen in time. Desperate to be remembered for something long gone. Now back on base, when young recruits ask where I'm from, I just smile and say, a small town that taught me everything I needed to outgrow it. And when I look in the mirror each morning, I no longer see the girl trying to disappear into the walls of East Valley High. I see the woman who walked back in through those same doors, unshaken, unmoved, unstoppable. Because the best kind of revenge is not making them regret what they did. It's making them irrelevant. Forever.